5. And the whole thing. You're live. Hello and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. We got a great show for you, but I gotta go. So I'm gonna let my co-host, David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers, take over for me because it looks like I'm gonna be in a hurry to go somewhere, and I gotta say goodbye. But David, I appreciate you taking over a little early, and when it gets all done, just try to click out and end the stream, okay? But I'm on call, and it looks like I'm going on call, so gotta go. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope it's a great show. David, take over. I love you, buddy.
Happy New Year, right?
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. I think we're all good on our end here, but I am gonna fade myself out. Okay. Talk to you later. Have a good one.
All right, and be safe, my brother.
Okay, I just gotta get out. Figure out how I gotta figure out how I get out of here.
So we say Happy New Year to all of you out there. And you know, life has always got life has always got its ups and downs and in-betweens. And we welcome you to the first of this year. Actually, it's the third. And unfortunately, Robert had to leave us. He's on call tonight, and it seems like everything is breaking, falling down, and otherwise not being acceptable, you know, for the first of the year. And when you're dealing with pumps and electrical equipment and all kinds of machinery, well, stuff like that just happens. So I'm here by myself this evening, and I've got a couple of stories lined up, and I don't think I can share the screen. And so I'm just going to read them and see how this turns out. Let's see, let me get back on to where I was and to find out. So for the first of this year, it seems like there's been some interesting things that have already started out the new year. And for example, one of the things that really surprised me was the fact that the Pope died and passed away on December the 31st. I just found that a little convenient, nonetheless. And for those of you who may be coming in, I cannot see the chat or anything. So tonight I have 2 stories lined up. They're not very long, but I found them interesting nonetheless. So hoping that you will find these stories at least a little bit interesting. Now, this particular book that I'm still reading out of, let's see, let me get over here to the name. American Indian Fairy Tales, Snowbird, the Water Tiger, etc., by Margaret Compton, and it's in 1906 is when this book was written. So not only are the stories and the legends old, but the book in of itself is over 100 years old. So the first story up for tonight is Turtle Dove, Sagecock, and the Witch. This is our program number 61. And for those of you who may not know, who may be coming in late, Robert had to go on call. A lot of machinery is down. Let's wish him luck and prayers. And so he's not cussing up a storm from all the machinery and everything that's down. So I can't see you all in the chat. I'm just going to assume there's one or two of you there. I welcome you. Thank you. We love you all, and we all hope that you've had a good, New Year's, and that this year will be a very good year for you. So, the first story for tonight is Turtle Dove, Sagecock, and the Witch. Turtle Dove was a widow with two children, Yellowbird, a girl 11 years of age, and Sagecock, a baby boy. The girl was big, awkward, and stupid, but the boy, though only a baby, gave signs of being a remarkably bright child. Turtle Dove was always anxious about him, for an old witch who lived in that part of the country stole every little boy that she could find. One day, Turtle Dove went down to the valley to gather seeds and herbs. She carried her baby on her back, but he was heavy, and after a time, she grew tired from the weight and the constant stooping. So she took the baby and laid him under a sagebrush, telling his sister to watch him. Presently, the old witch came that way, and going up to the bumble, felt it all over, and asked Yellowbird what it contained. "It is my sister," she said, for she thought the witch would not want to steal a girl. Then the old witch scolded her, growing more and more loud and angry in her speech and manner until her eyes stood out, glaring at the girl, and her grizzled locks rattled like the naked branches of the trees. Yellowbird grew cold as ice and could not even scream, she was so frightened. The old witch, seeing that she was not likely to be attacked, seized the little papoose and flew away with them on her bat-like wings to the distant mountain, which no man can climb by reason of the rattlesnake forest at its base. When she reached her den, which was a hollow place, black with cinders and hidden from sight by a clump of hemlock trees, she laid the boy on the ground, broke the strips of deerskin that held his fur blanket over him, and stretched his legs until he became a man. "Now," said she, "I shall have a husband." Although Sagecock had suddenly grown to a man's size, he had only a baby's heart and knew no better than to marry an ugly old witch. When Turtle Dove returned and heard Yellowbird's story, she was very angry and would not forgive the girl for not calling her. She spent day after day searching among the rocks, and whenever a beast or a witch might have a hiding place, she left no clump of bushes, however small, unexplored, but all to no purpose. At last she went to her brother, the eagle, and told him her story. Eagle was keen of sight and a swift hunter. He put on his war feathers and his war paint and set out in search of the boy. One day he heard a baby crying, but he did not recognize its voice. He told his sister, and she begged him to take her to the place, for she felt sure that she would know the child's voice and he would know hers. They went towards the witch's mountain. Before they reached it, they heard the child cry, but did not know how to get to him because of the rattlesnake forest. Eagle thought he would try his magic, for he was one of the wizards of the tribe. He shook 2 feathers from his headdress and spread them out into wings. which he fastened upon his shoulders. He then placed Turtle Dove on his back and flew with her over the forest of rattlesnakes. He hid in some bushes while the mother called, "Sagecock, Sagecock." The child cried and strove to get out of the den. He did struggle through the bushes, but the witch caught him. Then with one blow of her stick, she killed a mountain sheep nearby, and taking the boy into her arms, jumped into its stomach. She pulled the wool about them and lay very still. Meanwhile, Eagle killed a rabbit and put it on top of a tall pine tree, and then peeled the bark so that it would be very hard to climb. They watched for days, but with no success. At last, the old woman grew hungry, and Sagecock cried for food. So the witch crept out and, seeing the rabbit, tried to get to it. When Eagle saw her, he knew that the baby could not be far off. He stretched himself full length on the ground and listened with his ear to the earth. First, he heard a faint cry which seemed to come from the sheep. Then, as he went nearer, he heard the boy's heart thumping and knew just where to go. He found the baby, caught him up in his arms, and ran quickly with him down to the edge of the rattlesnake forest. Knowing the old witch would follow him, he raised a great snowstorm that covered all his tracks, so that she should not know in which direction he had gone. But in his haste, he dropped 2 eagle's feathers, and the witch knew at once who had stolen her husband. She went to her brother, one of the chiefs of the rattlesnakes, and asked him to take her part. He hated her, for she was always getting him into trouble. But she was his sister, and he could not refuse. Just then, Eagle's war whoop was heard, and having no place in which to hide her, he opened his mouth and let her jump down his throat. She would not be still and bothered him so much that after Eagle had passed, he tried to throw her off, but he could not rid himself of her, and at last he wrenched himself so hard that he jumped out of his own skin. The witch still lives in it and rolls about among the rocks to this day, mocking all who pass, though no one can ever lay hold of her. The pale faces call her Echo. Sagecock became a boy again and grew to be a mighty chief, succeeding his uncle, the eagle, as a warrior and as a magician. So that is the story of Turtle Dove, Sagecock, and the witch. So for those of you who may just joined us, I cannot see the chat room from my point of view tonight. For those of you who came in or are just coming in now, Robert had to go on call and has basically just left his computer on to allow me to do this show, by myself here. And I've got these stories that, I've been reading out of the same book. I'm sorry I can't share the screen where I would let you read along with me. So this is just sort of, you can see my, my mugly face, and hopefully you can hear me all right. We did sound check and everything before Robert had to leave. It's 10 minutes after, it's 12 minutes after 10 minutes after 12. Nope, here on Eastern Standard Time. And I've got a couple of stories. The first one was about turtle dove, sagecock, and the witch. This next story, which is still in the same book that I've been reading from for the last couple of weeks, American Indian Fairy Tales by Margaret Compton, 1907. Now, I don't have any dates on the stories themselves, but so let me take just a quick pause for the cause. And for those of you, again, I can't see the chat room. So for those of you who are here, I want to say, Happy New Year to you all on this 3rd of January, 2023. I'm hoping that you all survived the weekend and, all of the really bad weather. There's some bad weather going on now with tornadoes and stuff, but I've heard people say, oh, well, it's never been this cold or it's never been this warm. Well, y'all ain't lived as long as I have. And let me tell you, years ago, it was really cold and years ago, it was really warm for this time of the year. So, don't worry about it. It all works out in the end, most of the time. Excuse me. A little bit of my drink to get us by for this evening. For myself, I continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings that's out there in the universe. So our next slot for tonight is a story called The Island of Skeletons. Big Wave and his little nephew, Red Shell, lived together in a deep forest. The boy was the only relative that the old man had. He was very fond of him. He had brought Red Shell and his sister, Wild Sage, to his home some years before, just after the Great Plague had killed most of his tribe, among them the father and mother of the children. But they had not been many months in the forest before Wild Sage was stolen by a giant who lived on the island of skeletons. Big Wave warned the boy never to go towards the east, for if by any chance he should cross a certain magic line of sacred meal that Big Wave had drawn, he would be at the mercy of the giant. The boy obeyed for a time, but by and by he grew tired of playing in one place. So he went towards the east, not noticing when he crossed the magic line, till he came to the shore of a great lake. He amused himself for a while, throwing pebbles into the water and shooting arrows. A man came up to him and said, "Well, boy, where is your lodge?" Red Shell told him. Then the man proposed shooting arrows to see who could shoot the higher. Red Shell had much practice, and though he was only a boy, his arm was strong, and he drew the bow far back and sent the arrow much higher than the man did. The man laughed and said, "You are a brave boy. Now let us see whether you can swim as well as you can shoot." They jumped into the water and tried holding their breath while swimming. Again, the boy proved himself the victor. When they were again on land, the man said to him, "Will you go with me in my canoe? I am on my way to an island where there are pretty birds, and you can Shoot as many as you please. Red Shell said he would go and looked about for a canoe. The man began singing, and presently there appeared a canoe drawn by 6 white swans, 3 on either side. The boy and his companion stepped in, and the man guided the swans by singing. The island was so long that he could not see the end of it, but it was not very wide. It was thickly wooded, and there was so much undergrowth the ground could hardly be seen. But Red Shell noticed heaps of bones under the bushes and asked what they were. He was told that the island had once been a famous hunting ground, and these were the bones of the animals that had been killed. After wandering about for some time, the man proposed another swim. They had been in the water but a few minutes when the boy heard singing, and looking around, he saw the man going off in the canoe and taking his own and Red Shell's clothes with him. He shouted, but neither the man nor the birds paid any attention to it. Thus he was left alone and naked, and it was fast growing dark. Then he remembered his uncle's warnings and was so miserable from cold and hunger and fear that at last he sat down and cried. By and by he heard a voice calling to him, "Psst, keep still." He looked around and saw a skeleton lying on the ground not too far from him. It beckoned to him, what? And said, "Poor boy, it was the same with me, but I will help you if you will do me a service. Go to that tree," the skeleton pointing to one close by, "dig on the west side of it, and you will find a pouch of smoking mixture and a pipe. Bring them to me. You can get a flint on the shore. Bring that also." The boy was terribly frightened, but the skeleton spoke so kindly and not as though he meant to do harm. So Red Shell therefore went to the tree and brought the pipe and the smoking mixture. Then he found a flint, and on that, being asked to do so, struck fire, lit the pipe, and handed the same to the skeleton. The skeleton smoked quickly, drawing the smoke into the mouth and letting it escape between the ribs. Red Shell watched and saw mice run out from between the bones. When the skeleton was rid of them, it said, "Now I feel better and can tell you what to do to escape my fate. A giant is coming tonight with 3 dogs to hunt you and kill you for his supper. You must lose the trail for them by jumping into the water many times on your way to a hollow tree, which you will find on the other side of the island. In the morning, after they have gone, come back to me." Well, Red Shell thanked the skeleton and started at once to find the tree. It was quite dark, so he could see nothing, but he ran from tree to tree, climbing halfway up each one and running into the water many times before he found the place where he had been told to sleep. Towards morning, he heard the splash of a canoe in the water, and soon a giant, followed by 3 large dogs, strode into the forest. "You must hunt this animal," the giant said to the dogs. They scented the trail and dashed through the bushes. They rushed up one tree and then another, and at last came back to the giant with their tail between their legs, for they had found nothing. He was so angry that he struck the foremost animal with his war club and killed it on the spot. Then he drove the others down to the canoe, jumped in, and went away. He skinned and ate the animal and ate it raw. When they were out of sight of the island, Red Shell crept from his hiding place and went back to the skeleton. "You are still alive?" it asked in surprise. "You are a brave boy," the skeleton said. "Tonight, the man who brought you here will come to drink your blood. You must go down to the shore before the darkness comes and dig a pit in the sand. Lie down in it and cover yourself with sand. When he leaves his canoe, get into it and say, 'Swans, come, let us go home.' If the man calls you, you must not turn around or look at him. When you are free, do not forget the skeleton." Red Shell promised to come back to the island and to do all that he could for the poor bones. He went down to the shore and dug the pit deep enough so that when he stood in it, his head was on a level with the water. When he heard the song in the distance, he knew that the swans were coming. So he covered his head with sand and waited till he heard a footstep on the dry leaves. Then he crept out stealthily, stepped in the canoe and whispered to the swans. "Come, let us go home," he said. He began the song that he had heard their master sing to them, and the canoe glided from the shore. The swans carried him down the lake to a large cleft rock in the center. They drew the canoe through the opening and through the cave until they came to a stone door. Red Shell tried to open it, but he could not. Then he turned the canoe around and then struck the door with the stern of the canoe. Immediately the door flew open and Red Shell found himself in a very fine lodge. He saw his own clothes and many others heaped in a corner near the fire, which was burning brightly. A kettle of soup was steaming over it, and there were some potatoes in the ashes on the hearth. Seeing no one, the boy ate supper and then lay down to sleep on a couch of wildcat skins. In the morning, he went out and stepping into the canoe said, "Come, swans, let us go to the island." He saw the two dogs lying asleep in the sun and on landing the canoe, found that they had killed their master. The skeleton was delighted to see him and praised him for his courage and for being true to his word. But he said to him, "You must not go home yet. Travel toward the east for 3 days, and you will come to some very large rocks. There you will see a young girl drawing water from a spring. She is your sister, Wild Sage, whom the giant stole many moons since, and whom you believe to be dead. You will be able to get her away. When you have done so, come back to me." Now Red Shell at once set out for the east, and in 3 days he found the rocks of which he had been told. As he came near them, he saw a lovely girl drawing water. "Sister," he said, going up to her, "you must come home with me." She was frightened and tried to run away, and looking back, she saw that it was really her brother. When she was even more afraid, though, she turned and spoke to him. "Psst," she said, A giant keeps me here. Go before he sees you, or he will kill you. Red Shell did not move. Go, said Wild Sage. No, he answered, not till you go with me. Take me to your lodge. The giant had gone to a cranberry swamp, and Wild Sage knew that he would not return until that evening. So she ventured to take her brother home with her. She dug a pit in one corner of the lodge, told him to get into it, and then covered it with her bed of buffalo skins. Just before the darkness came, the giant's dogs rushed in, barking furiously. Who, said the giant, is hidden here? No one, said Wild Sage. There is, said the giant, or the dogs would not bark like that. They did not discover Red Shell, however, so the giant sat down to his supper. This boy is not tender. He is not cooked enough. Get up and cook him more, said the giant. Cook it yourself if it doesn't suit you, she answered. The giant took no notice of her answer, but called to her to come and take off his moccasins. Take them off yourself, she said. Caw, thought the giant. Now I know she has someone hidden. I will kill him in the morning. Early the next day, the giant said he was going to the cranberry swamp to get some children for his dinner. He did not go far from the lodge, but hid himself in some bushes close to the shore. He saw Wild Sage and her brother get into a canoe and threw a hook after them, which caught the boat and drew it towards the shore. But Red Shell took up a stone and broke the hook, and then they floated off once more. The giant, who was in a terrible rage, he lay flat on the ground and, putting his mouth to the water, drank so fast that the canoe was drawn close to the shore. He began to swell from drinking such a quantity of water and could not move. Red Shell took another stone and threw it at him. It struck him and he snapped in two, and the water he had swallowed flowed back into the lake. Red Shell and his sister then sailed to the island, where the two dogs who had eaten their master rushed down to meet them. The boy raised his hand threateningly and said, Off to the woods as wolves. You no longer deserve to be dogs. The animals slunk away, growling, and as they disappeared, were seen to change into lean and hungry wolves. Red Shell went to the skeleton, who commanded him to gather all the bones that he could find on the island and laid them side by side in one particular place. Then he was to say to the bones, Dead folk, arise. It took him and his sister many days, for there were bones everywhere. When all had been arranged in one place, Red Shell stood up at a little distance and called loudly, Dead folk, arise. The bones raised themselves and took human form. All the men had bows and arrows, but some had only one arm and others only had one leg. The skeleton whom Red Shell had first met became a tall, handsome warrior, perfect in every limb. He saluted Red Shell as chief, and the others did the same. Then the boy and his sister crossed the lake and traveled westward till they came to their uncle's lodge. He was very old. His fire was out, and he was still mourning for his nephew. But as he listened to the story of the lad's adventures, and realized that he had come back unhurt, some of the old man's years had left him. They built a long lodge with many fireplaces. And then Red Shell returned to the island and brought back those who had been skeletons. The handsome brave, who was known as White Eagle, married Wild Sage, and they dwelt together in peace to the end of their lives. Now, as just an observation, one could say that the skeleton and the bones of the warrior, he was already dead, but when he was resurrected, they lived until the end of their lives. So anyway, just interesting how he was resurrected, and all the other bones too. Now, it's only been 33 minutes since I've been on here this evening, and to not cheat you all for coming and listening to a story, and since we don't have anything else on the agenda for this evening here, for those of you who may come in late, Robert is not with me tonight because he's on call and was called and had to go out. God bless him. You know, at 9:30 at night, his time to go out and then have to deal with stuff that's broken and not working and that, you know. But anyway, that's what his job entails. And there have been times when I've been on call as other folks who, you know, who have different jobs, you know, get called out, you know, at umpteen times of the day or night and cold or wet weather or whatever, and you got to do your job. So, but anyway, for those of you who might be watching this, we send our love and gratitude. Hope that your new year is working out okay. I cannot see the chat room, so I'm just kind of winging this, and it's sort of like radio. I know some of y'all are out there, but I don't know. I can't see your faces. I can't see the chat room. So hopefully you all are doing well. And I'm going to do one more story tonight, just to because Robert's not here. And I was only going to do 2 stories, which I've just finished. But since Robert's not here, I want to take a little short break here and welcome you all. I really do hope you're doing well, honestly. I'm getting by. For those of you who might wish to know, how's Hawkeye doing? Well, my arm is better from the heart cath that they did to me 2 weeks ago now. But it is yellow and sore and it hurts. And well, I would not have expected it to be this sore 2 weeks after the event. Duggar's doing fine. He's over there laying on the couch. We both had a relatively quiet New Year's. My dearest neighbors, Sheila and Ricky, brought over dinner to me on New Year's Day. Some folks were asking if I've been fed over the holidays, and they brought me dinner on Christmas and they brought me dinner on New Year's Day. God bless them. So this story is called Stone Shirt and the 1-2. Now, I've read this before, but I don't know how long it is, so I'm just going to start into this. And it's 10:37 p.m. on the Eastern Coast, 9:37 in the Central. But anyway, so we do all hope that you're doing well. This story, Stone Shirt and the 1-2. Stone Shirt was a terrible giant who wore a shirt of shells so fastened that no arrow could pierce it. He lived with his 3 daughters on the shore of the big sea water. His daughters were not bad or hard-hearted, but they were forced to do all sorts of evil to protect their father. They had magic arrows which went wherever they wished and found their way straight to the hearts of their enemies, though shot without aim. Stone Shirt, while out hunting one day, saw a beautiful woman gathering flags. "Who are you?" he said to her. She was afraid of him and said, "I am Spearmint." "You are not," roared the giant. "You are Mouse, the wife of the crane. I will kill him and you shall live with me. Kill your child before I return, or I will dash him to pieces before your very eyes." Mouse picked up the boy, and as soon as the giant was out of sight, she ran quickly with it to its grandmother's. Then she went back and smeared the stones with the blood of some fresh bear's meat, which she threw into the lake. She could not warn her husband, for he had gone hunting soon after sunrise, and she did not know which way he went or when he would likely to return. Search as she might, there was no escape. The giant was not long gone, and when he returned, he carried the scalp of the crane, whom he had met on the way back to his wigwam. Seizing Mouse by the hair, he shook the scalp in her face and then dragged her through the forest. The deer had shed his horns many times when the baby boy, now grown to be a fine lad, went with his grandmother to dig flag roots. They took a sharp flint knife with which to cut the ground, for the roots are hard to pull. When they had been some time in the swamp, they found that the roots came up easily, and then more easily, till at last they had only to take a hold of a flag to have it at once loosened from the earth. The old woman then said, "Surely something strange is going to happen. Let us go home. I do not care to dig any more today." The boy took an armful of flags to the place where he had put the others, but the pile was gone. He called to his grandmother and asked her if she had moved the roots. "No, my child," she said, "perhaps some giant has stolen them. Let us go home." The boy looked around and soon spied a man sitting under a tree not far off. He felt sure it was he who had stolen the flags, and taking up some small stones, threw them at him, calling him, "Thief, you coward!" The man did not move. At last a stone, larger than the others, struck his leg and broke it. He lifted up the leg and bound it tightly with a strip torn from his coat and sat down again under the tree. Then he beckoned the boy and pointed to some bones in front of him and asked, "What bones are these?" The boy answered promptly, "Elk or deer." "No," said the man, "these are the bones of your father. Has not the old woman told you how he was killed by Stone Shirt and left his bones to rot like those of the wolf?" "No," said the boy. "Has she not told you of your mother, whom Stone Shirt carried off?" "No," said the lad again, but the man saw he would fight the giant. So he said no more, but disappeared as suddenly as he had come. The boy went back to his grandmother and told her what he had heard. She knew at once that he must have seen a spirit. When the boy blamed her for keeping the story of her father's death a secret, she cried and said, "You are my only hope. If you go to fight Stone Shirt, he will kill you, and I shall be alone." The boy made no answer, but went and lay down on his couch of skins, for he felt a heavy sleep coming over him. He slept 3 days and 3 nights. When he awoke, he refused food and said, "I am going to all nations to enlist warriors in my cause." And he passed out of the wigwam. The boy was tall and well formed, and while he slept, he had taken on the face of a young man. He traveled many moons, and wherever he went, the chiefs listened to him. And the young men of different tribes took up their bows and arrows and declared themselves ready. Ready to take up arms. They took up their bows and arrows to follow him. Among them were 2 magicians, the wolf and the rattlesnake. These 2 went with him some distance, and the 3 entered his grandmother's wigwam. After they had eaten a meal which the old woman gladly prepared for them, the young man took a stone axe and handing it to her, asked her to cut him in 2. She refused, but he persisted, and at last commanded her to do so as he had said, and in such a tone that she dared not disobey. She struck the blow tremblingly, hitting the red deer's tail that he wore, when lo, each half of his body took form, and instead of one handsome young warrior, there were 2 who were so much alike that one could not distinguish one from the other. The 1-2, as they called themselves, went out to meet the people who were now advancing through the forest. The number of them was so great that it was a day's march from the foremost men to those at the end of the trail. Their way lay through a barren place, and they traveled all day without seeing trees or water. The next morning they began to grumble, for they were suffering from thirst. As the day wore on, they grumbled more and more and began to threaten the 1-2, though no one had been compelled to follow. The rattlesnake, who had much wisdom, said, "1-2, now is the time to bring out your magic cup." This cup was a large bowl of polished basswood. It could be held in the hand, and yet when one looked inside it, one could not see the bottom. 1-2 had received it from a magician when he first set out on his journey. He had sealed it, as he had been told, with a water lily leaf and the balsam of the fir, and kept it to use when in great distress. The brothers consulted each other together and decided to take Rattlesnake's advice. They handed the cup from one to another. As soon had one had taken all that he wanted, even to what might have been half that it held, the cup was full again. But before it could be passed to the wolf, he was dead. Then the people grumbled again, for the wolf was brave and gave them courage. The brothers paid no attention to the complaints, but one held the cup while the others took some water. And when they took water from it, and with it he sprinkled the wolf. Wolf arose and cried, "Why did you disturb me? I was having such a pleasant dreams." They gave him the cup and he drank all that there was in it. But when he handed it to the brothers, it did not refill. They had brought but little food with them, and no animals crossed their path in the barren place, so they were all hungry. And on the third day, they again began to grumble and to accuse the brothers. The one too said nothing, but towards evening they said to the wolf, who is keen of sight and scent, "Is not that an antelope in the distance?" "Yes," said the wolf, "but it is the goat with many eyes, the watchman of Stone Shirt. Nevertheless, I will go and kill it." Then the rattlesnake said, "Let me go, for the antelope will see you and will run away." But the one two sent the wolf, for they knew him to be the braver. He started at once, going in and out so as to hide in the bushes. After he had gone, the rattlesnake said to the brothers, "Do you see me?" "No," was the answer. And they began to search for him. They looked in vain until the rattlesnake chose to show himself, although they were standing in an open space where there was no place for him to hide. The rattlesnake again asked to be allowed to hunt the antelope. The brothers told him he might go, and in a few hours he returned with the game on his shoulders. The wolf saw him, and as he passed, and at first was very angry, but afterwards he said to himself, "What does it matter so long as the people get food?" Again, they were without water. So the one two changed themselves into doves, took the magic cup and flew it towards the lodge of Stone Shirt, which they knew was on the edge of a lake. The daughters of Stone Shirt bathed in the lake every morning, and having been annoyed by birds peeking at them from the bushes, they set a snare for them. The one two, knowing nothing of this, were caught, and the maidens carried them to a lodge. Stone Shirt looked at them with suspicion, for he knew no such birds lived thereabouts, and he feared that they were spies. His daughters, however, persuaded him not to kill them. They stroked them and fed them, and in the morning let them fly away. The brothers went back to the bushes where they had dropped the cup, filled it, and flew with it to their camp. The next day they ventured near Stone Shirt's lodge in their natural form. This time they saw their mother. She did not believe their story at first, for she had left only one child. But when they explained how everything had happened, she begged them not to fight Stone Shirt and told them about his armor and his daughter's arrows. But they could not be persuaded. They told her they would surely fight the giant the next day, and warned her not to go down to the lake for fear she might be hit by a stray arrow. That night, the one two disguised themselves as mice and crept into the wigwam of Stone Shirt, where they nibbled the strings of all his bows. The rattlesnake went with them and hid himself behind a rock on which Stone Shirt sat every morning. When the giant appeared as usual, the rattlesnake bit him. He leaped high in the air and exclaimed, "We are betrayed." His daughters seized their bows and arrows, but found them useless, and the strings had been gnawed. The cry of Stone Shirt had roused the warriors, who, having advanced in the night, were lying in ambush near his lodge. They let fly a shower of arrows, and then they rushed from their hiding place. Both the maidens were struck. and waving their hands to their enemies to fall back, they sang a death song and fell dead across the path that led to the lodge. One, two were very sorry, for the maidens had been kind to them. They buried them with great mourning, but the bones of Stone Shirt were left to rot as he had left those of their father, the crane. And that is the end of that story, rather abruptly. So, my dear friends, it's been 53 minutes. I can't see the chat, or I would say hello and react or whatever. So I'm going to cut this for usually do about 2 hours on Tuesdays. And we want to thank Robert for allowing me to be here and to read stories from the book of stories and fairy tales and Indian lore that was written in 1907, I might add as an addendum to this. And I can't see the chat, but I want to say hi to those who may be here this evening. Now, this chat will probably still run because Robert's computer is going to be still running, but that I won't be there, and neither will anybody else. So, but I do want to say Happy New Year's to everyone. I'm hoping this year will be good to everyone. There are some supposedly big changes coming this January. We were told this last year that big changes were going to come in January and then in February, and they never did show up. But, you know, they're saying the same thing again. But I do have to mention one thing at the end of these stories, that if for those of you who pay attention to the Schumann resonance, there isn't any. If you go to the Schumann resonance thing and look, there aren't any, there's nothing going on, which has been kind of like this for a little while now. And it's just a curious thing because for almost the last year, the Schumann res was just nuts and crazy and all over the place. And now there's almost nothing. I mean, literally almost nothing. So keep an eye on that. I'm being positive for this coming year. There are a lot of folks who are just still want to try to sell you doom and gloom, and we're all going to die tomorrow. And my advice to you is to try to stay out of that. Try not to go into that we're all going to die scenario, because the more that you repeat it, the more that you bring it about, then you almost manifest a bad situation. And I don't think any of us want to manifest or create a bad situation. So if we start out now by saying this is going to be a good year, don't matter what's going to come, we're going to make it. We made it through 2022. A lot of folks said we're never going to make it. We've made it through this last couple of years of all this, you know, the 19 stuff and all that goes with it. A lot of truth is coming out now. We've got a new Congress that, as of this, they had not come up with a Speaker of the House, which I find, you know, let them fight it out. That's what we need. That's what this republic is supposed to be about. So, my friends, wish for the best, hope for the best, pray for the best, and do your best just to do your best. What should you expect of yourself for this coming year? Just do the best you can under the circumstances, whatever those circumstances might be. Help your neighbor when you can. and like Duggar, you know, be on your toes. And if you have to, bark at intruders. So it's been almost an hour. I love you all. Please be the frequency that you wish to receive. I continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings that are just running around out there in the universe. So please take care of yourself. Like I said, this I'm going to shut off now, but the YouTube will still, the feed will still be on, but there won't be anything there. So blessings to you all. For those of you who might, I'm going to take a short break and then I'm going to do a live on, I'm going to go live on my live stream. So blessings to y'all. Cheers. Keep the faith. Believe, 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 believe. And if you believe that positive things are going to happen, then stick with it. It might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen next week. It might not happen next month. But believe, 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 believe. Okie dokie. So I'm out of here for now. I love you all. Please stay safe. And I don't know, give me 15 minutes and I'll be live on my channel. So I love you. Until next time, cheers.